let me tell you a little bit about the New Jersey Family Engagement Hub. We are a centralized information hub for educators, families, and community partners. We work with these constituencies to create collaborations and build bridges on all things family engagement. We do this by providing tools and strategies such as our in person workshops and our online virtual offerings. We also work with these constituencies to empower our youth. We need to know what our youth need so that they continue to be successful both in school and out of school.
All right, let's get started. So, welcome everyone again. This is our part one of our Supporting Struggling Learners series. We will have part two at the end of the month. And part one is called Understanding the Challenge. So, we're excited to dive in with you today. So, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself into the chat, where are you zooming in from? How old are your children? Or if you're an educator, how old are your students? And what is one hope that you have for this webinar? We'll wait another 30 seconds or so. I also just want to say I know sometimes we're chiming in, calling in from our cell phones, so it's hard to enter into the chat. So no worries if that's hard. But we'll just hold the chat open for another few seconds. Just wondering who's here. Oh, we have Sue. Sue, I know you've been to lots of our webinars, so welcome back. Sue from Cranford, a 7, 9, and 11-year-old. Great. And I'm going to keep, oh, and Lucinda. Hi, Lucinda. Oh, Lucinda is back. Yay, from Texas, a 3 and a 9-year-old. Get help when I need and not have to have, and learn when you have a genuine concern. Okay. Carrie, hello from maybe with my 16-month-old. I'm so glad you're with us today. Thank you for entering in your information into the chat. We're going to do some quick introductions into ourselves. So, my name is Erica Brenton, as a lot of you know. I've been in education for over 20 years now, and I started my career as a New York City public school teacher. I became very invested in social emotional learning, which is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. And so I really chose to specialize in that area. I live in Montclair, New Jersey with my family. I have two children, middle schooler and elementary schooler. So this work is both very personal to me and from a professional perspective as well. And I like to go on long walks and read and spend time with my family. So I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Erin Dickerson, who's going to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Erin Dickerson Glover. I am an educator. I've also been in education for over 20 years. I began my educational experience in higher ed and quickly learned that I truly enjoyed working with the younger learners. So I became a teacher focusing on K to 12 and falling in love with being a leader in schools. And so working as a mentor, a teacher, and now an administrator. I'm in the independent school world in the Pacific Northwest. I focus on student retention, teacher support, and mentorship, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I live in Seattle with my family, my husband, and my two children. I put in the chat, I have a 17-month-old and a 5-year-old. And when I'm not at school or mommying, I enjoy cooking, traveling, reading, and special family time around the world.
Thanks, Erin. And we'll hear more from Erin in just a few minutes. Today, what we are hoping to do and have you walk away with is understanding what struggling looks like. So, what does it look like in your home to see your child struggle? We're going to talk about typical versus concerning patterns in all different age groups. We're going to share some insights on how to have really positive conversations with teachers, how to have those collaborative relationships. We'll talk about some homework strategies that you can include in your home. And then we'll have some reflection times and some next steps. So we are hoping that this webinar is interactive as much as possible. We would love to hear from you. We have a lot of information to share, but so do you. So please make sure that you are entering in your information and your thoughts and ideas and questions into the chat as much as you can. One thing I just wanted to call your attention to is something that we've created for you called a Padlet, and I'm going to put the link in the chat right now. And you can also use the QR code. Actually, let me take you there real quick. Let me just escape here. I'll take you to the Padlet. A Padlet is a place where we have created a hub of information for you. So tons of resources. You'll find the PowerPoint here, a lot of handouts for things that you can try for homework, articles and books, a nice meditation you could do with your children, and a great resource for a planning kind of calendar. So this is available to you during the session and after. Please use it as much as you'd like to. And I'm going to head back to our presentation. So you have the link, and also you could use this QR code. We wanted to start off with a nice grounding quote here, and this is one of the ones I love, and maybe I've actually given this one in previous workshops. Children do well when they can. It's by Dr. Ross Greene, who has written 2 books, and one of those books I put in the Padlet, Lost at School and Raising Human Beings, and he is just a fantastic educator, child development specialist, and he really talks about that when kids have the tools and they have the skills, they're going to do well. They're not doing things to drive us crazy or to be unmotivated or manipulative. They're really doing things because they don't have the skills quite yet. And so I'm going to play a quick video from Dr. Ross Greene because this quote only does a little bit of justice. If I can find, here we go. I'm going to play a video by him, and we'll see what he says and why he came up with this really important quote.
You know, there are 2 philosophies that you could apply to a child who's not doing well. And in the case of the children that I work with, it's mostly kids who have behavioral challenges. What we've been believing about them for a very long time is the philosophy called kids do well if they wanna. The belief that if a child isn't doing well, isn't behaving himself, it must be because he doesn't wanna behave himself. He doesn't wanna do well. And I find that that's not the best belief system. I find that it's inaccurate, but I can tell you what it leads us to. It leads us to interventions aimed at making kids wanna do well. How do you make a kid wanna do well? We are all very familiar with the strategies. You reward the behaviors you like so as to see more of them. You punish the behaviors you don't so as to see less of them. And you are now in the business of making a kid wanna do well, founded on the belief that he didn't want to do well in the first place. Important question to ask. Why would any kid not want to do well? I mean, don't all of us do pretty much the best we can in pretty much most of the circumstances we find ourselves in? Kids do well if they can takes us in a completely different direction. It's the belief that if this kid could do well, he would do well. And that if he's not doing well, something must be getting in his way. The most important role that an adult can play in the life of a kid who's not doing well isn't to come up with yet another, more creative, more potent reward or punishment to make the kid want to do well, but rather to finally, at long last, figure out what's been getting in this kid's way. Until we figure that out, we're not going to be very successful at helping the kid.
Okay. I love Dr. Ross Greene. What we're going to be talking about today is how can we provide the tools and the skills that kids need to succeed so that they want to do the work. So I'm just curious to hear from you all in your home right now. How does school feel in your house? Does it feel, number one, you could just put a number in the chat, mostly manageable. 2 is stressful at times. 3, a daily source of conflict. Or 4, I'm not even sure where to start. How does school feel in your house right now? I'll actually enter in how I feel in my chat. Okay, so we have 4, 2s, 3s. So I feel like what I'm not seeing are any ones. So this is really, really a good jumping off point for us to talk about, well, where do we start? What can we do? Thank you all for entering that. And then just one follow-up question to that is, what does struggling look like in your home? And you don't have to enter in like a whole paragraph or anything like that. Just like one word. What does it look like in your home? So for me, I might say something like meltdowns. And Aaron wrote emotional. What does struggling look like in your home? Just one word or phrase. Negative. Loud. Anxiety or school avoidance. Exhausted. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about why children struggle. And actually, I think, Erin, this is where I hand the presentation over to you, right? Okay. We are going, oh, sorry, a couple of other thoughts in the chat. Defensiveness, emotional. So we all kind of are struggling with similar types of emotions and feelings. So that leads us right to a great point where I'm going to hand it over to Erin, who's going to talk to us about, well, why do our children even struggle?
Thank you, Erica. I want to make sure that everyone understands that we share our feelings, our emotions, and our realities in this space. And I want to call a norm out of that this is a safe space. Parents find it challenging to share the reality of what they face behind closed doors. And we want you to know that we want to help and that we want your honest inflection, feedback, participation, because the more we know, the more we can do together. And so I agree with what everyone has shared. It sounds like the just right, expected struggle in my house. And so, what we notice, why children struggle. For all of us, I am sure we can identify at least one of these four: attention and focus, organization and follow through, skill gaps like reading, math, writing. I know that there was some school avoidance that Sue alluded to and what feels hard at home for her learners right now. And that emotional regulation and frustration. All of us can attest to us knowing at least one of these exist with our kiddos. And so when you are seeing shifts in their attention, shifts in their focus, meaning they're unable to focus, maybe it's hard to keep their attention, thinking about executive functioning skills like organization and follow through, those 1, 2, 3 steps can feel really, really heavy for learners. When they don't feel like they are good enough at school, like in reading and in math and in writing. And then that social emotional regulation and frustration, things that they cannot help, but their body is reacting to what feels hard for them in that moment, are all different reasons and ways in which we see why our children struggle. So let's keep going. At home struggles and strategies. Home and school, it's the communication of partnership and trust that's built hopefully between you and your children's teachers. And there is also a partnership that means things have to happen at home. Strategies start at home and can also be paired with what happens at school. So here are some at-home strategies that we would like for you to think about implementing with your learner or children. So think about this. Their homework is out, but your child is distracted. They're getting up repeatedly. They could be zoning out, meaning the work is out, their eyes are on it, but there's no attention there. They might be needing consistent reminders to stay with the task. These all might be excellent identifiers for you as a parent or teacher saying, this child is struggling. Can anyone, sorry, 1 second here. Can anyone in the chat really quickly identify one that you see most often in your home? Is it distractedness? Getting up repeatedly? There might be a lot of movement, maybe zoning out, needing reminders to stay on the task. Thank you, Lucinda. Okay, needing constant reminders. For Erica, needing constant reminders. Okay, feel free to continue to add. It's good to know where we see some of these trends in regards to where our learners are struggling at home. And so being able to spending a long time in the bathroom, oh, that's a really good one. Anxiety. Well, let's see, 9-year-old Lucinda has autism. He's in a special ed and homework is a battle. I hear you. I also have a child, my 5-year-old has autism, and doing work at home, we've had that be a battle. So when he gets home, he doesn't want to do schoolwork. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, but not yet, Lucinda, and I really appreciate your honesty there. So let's think about ways in which, and Erica, if you could go to the next slide, that would be great. Okay, so let's think about ways in which you can help, support, and guide your child through these really challenging moments when they're struggling. So shortening the work time. Even if the teacher says this is a timed assignment or they need to stay on task for the entire time, you at home as the parent, you know your child. And if your child is unable to sustain the time committed to the assignment, feel free to shorten it and talk through that, right? You want them to say, oh, all right, I'm noticing this might be a bit challenging. What if we set a timer? And there's an example on the timer on the page. Maybe we set a timer. Do you think we should set it for 6 minutes or 10 minutes? And let the learner guide that selection, but also hold them accountable for that. So shortening the work time can also be really helpful. At my school, we call it chunking the work. And so we can only take so many bites out of a cookie, right, at once. So taking a little bite or just chunking your work bit by bit will allow learners to feel more successful when they struggle. Thinking about reducing the distractions before starting. So at home, if you have a learner that's working on homework, or maybe it's just a practice activity, or coloring, or even dancing to music. Before you start, and if you have seen this as a space of struggle for your child, saying, oh, let's set ourselves up for success. Last time we noticed that it was really hard for us to stay in this space. Why don't we clean off the space? Why don't we take off our shoes? Let's clear off the table so we have more space to do our work. I know it helps me focus. How does that make you feel? Curiosity as a parent, also in the moments of struggle, also very, very important. You want to show your child that you are committed to their wellness, to their health, to their support, and their success. And being able to read the room and in that moment of challenge, remove what you think could also be a distraction for them. And then name the goal out loud. You want to make sure that they know, that you know, that it is a collective effort, right? That everyone can get this done. And having the goal loud and proud, you could write it at the top of the paper. You can say it and then say, oh, can you remind me, what is our goal before we get started? And have them state it back to you. All ways in which you can shift their thinking and help them attack what felt hard in the moment or the last time to help eliminate the struggle. All right, so when your child starts homework, but, one of these things happen. Maybe they forget steps. They might jump from 1 and go all the way to page 4. Maybe they skip questions because they're moving so quickly through their work. or they already can identify that that specific question is a really challenging question and they struggled through it last time. So in order to eliminate that from their experience again, they'll just skip right over it. Maybe you've experienced your child losing papers. Mommy, I had it. I put it in my backpack. I promise. Teacher said it was going to be the left side of my red folder. You open up the red folder, the left side of the folder is gone. There is no paper there. What happened to the paper? I don't know. Oftentimes, your child knows exactly what happened to the paper because they saw the paper and it was not a task that they felt comfortable completing independently. So they might have balled it up. If this is your situation, I highly suggest checking pockets of your children's coat, checking underneath or behind the folder, and maybe even checking in their lunchbox if they take lunch to work. All places where they might not think we're noticing, but they like to stash things. You also might find when it's time to start homework that your child insists they're done when the work is incomplete. Okay, let's take out our homework folder. I already did it, Mommy. You did? Let's double check. We don't have to. I already did it at school. My teacher will check tomorrow. So in that space, I highly suggest being able to still, while you want to show that you're listening to your child's words, you want to be able to double check with them. Okay, let's look at it together. Can I double check it for you before you give it to your teacher? And then thinking about projects that are left until the last minute. All right, bedtime. Everyone upstairs. Okay, who's in the shower first? Mommy, can you look at my bag? I think I might need to finish that report for tomorrow. Or I need a report done for tomorrow. Dad, can you add some pictures to my paper? And as a parent, being caught off guard feels very uncomfortable because you want your child to succeed. But also, frustration is the first emotion that you feel as a parent. Being curious of why they waited to the last minute is the approach in which we are encouraging you to have as your mindset. Why am I just finding out about this now? Why did they not want to do this before? There may be something about the project that they feel like it's really challenging, and therefore it's a struggle, and a struggle that they are not willing to commit to. Okay. Thank you, Erica. Now, I also want to note that as parents, we are not saying that struggling is something that we want to eliminate, because there is healthy mindset, there's healthy self-confidence, there's a healthy experience when a child struggles. But we also want to make sure that their struggles lead to success. It may not happen tomorrow, and in the mindset, in that day-to-day conversation, you might be using the word not yet quite a bit. What we want to do is make sure that you are scaffolding or building in the steps that they need so they can see that they too can be successful, even in the moments when they find struggle. So what are some ways that you can help your learner organize and step up and step through the follow-through action items of what feels hard at home? You could break tasks into visual steps. On the right side of the slide in front of you, you'll see that a lot of steps are broken down into ELA problem 1, math, example problems 1 through 10, building in a break, and then going back and finishing the math. You can notice right there that math is being chunked in this breakdown. Oftentimes, learners that struggle with long action items or a lot of homework, the break allows them to put a pause on to those big emotions. What feels hard? Pause it, break. It may be that their body wants to move and they're spending all the time focused on keeping their body still and producing work, that it becomes a challenge for them to actually stay in that calm, quiet space. So providing those breaks are also very important. And when it comes to break time at home, coming up with a break schedule and being able to say, what are some ways that we can break our bodies or break space from work that would help you feel successful? dancing, do some of that gross motor activity, being able to have choice, right? Maybe it's choice board where they could paint or listen to music or build with Legos. Maybe it's drawing. Maybe it's just quiet reading. And make sure that you are clear with those expectations, that this is not a complete dismissal of the work, that it's just for a short period of time to reset your brain and give space so that you can come back and be ready to finish the work so that you can be successful in doing the work for school. Number 2, use a consistent check-in routine. I often say to my 5-year-old, if you don't tell me, mommy doesn't know. And so it's really important that we teach our young children the importance of checking in with their body and checking in with their grown-up or their teacher in their space. Being able to check off when they feel successful always holds them accountable to what they've done and what they have yet to do. And so providing a menu or a check-in routine and having enough consistency where at home, when I walk through the door, I know that I need to go to my check-in board and maybe it's go through and actually check off. If there's struggle with your learner for that buy-in, maybe you allow them to choose what they use for their check-off. Maybe it's a whiteboard. That's fun for littles. And so they can pick their favorite color, and maybe they're going to check off in the box. Or maybe it's a paper for youngers, for your older learners, and they want to come in and they're like, Mom, I did that. Okay, so you tell me what you've done, and then I can check it off for you. And maybe there's a chalkboard in the kitchen. But keeping that as part of the routine helps with that consistency so that they feel like they have action items and they have small successes. And then create an end of homework ritual. Maybe it's a high five. Maybe it's a dance. I know my daughter, she loves having a little cookie or her choice of treat where she's like, Mommy, I've done all my work. Now can I have? And so our conversation has been at home, if you've done 1, 2, 3, then you get to ask me. And that means you can ask me for something that you want after you've done the things that we need to do. And then keeping your system simple and consistent. A lot of parents have lots of ideas. A lot of educators out there are telling you to do a lot of things, but you know what's just right for your home and for your learner. So Lucinda, you have a question. You said, is there a sort of standard time that you should expect based on an age, a child to be able to focus on a task? For example, 10 minutes for a 3-year-old, 15 minutes for a 9-year-old. I really struggle with whether I am too hard on them or asking too much, even when I'm breaking it into chunks. Oh, I hear you, and know that you're not the only parent with this struggle. I will say that, yes, while we have expectations for our learners, especially at home, you want to be able to provide what feels good. So I would start for your 3-year-old, I would start with 3 to 5 minutes and see how that takes you. If you are successful in those 5 minutes, then say, oh, next time, let's do a challenge. Let's try 6 to 8 minutes, right? Oftentimes when your children get home from school, they've done all of that work. Or if they are with another caregiver for most part of the day or a chunk of the day, when they get back to you, your safe person, your safe space of home, it's hard, right? It's time to let loose. All of those moments of them holding it together and doing their best self work, they see you and they're like, oh, you know me, and they might fall apart. So giving some space during the transitional time of going back into home or you coming home and entering that space, and then setting up smaller chunks. It's always healthier to start with small and build up rather than to start large and then feel like you need to build backwards. Also for your children, you want them to have those small successes so there's more buy-in for them to be successful when it gets to the more challenging moments and when you're able to extend that work time. Thank you for your question, Lucinda. Okay, Erica.
Should we move forward to the next slide, Erin?
Sure, we can move forward. And I want to say for anyone, if you have questions, please enter them into the chat. I think one of the ways that this is the most successful for all of us is that you get to think in real time with a team of parents that can support you and give you ideas. So I love it and I appreciate it. And okay, let's attack the next one. What this looks like. Okay, so your child avoids certain subjects. Maybe they take unusual time to complete work. Maybe it's being frustrated when tasks are required, such as reading, writing, or math. And maybe you hear these words, I'm bad at this. To hear those words, I find is one of the most horrific sentences that I could hear a child say. First off, that 3-letter word, BAD, that is a word that we oftentimes focus on removing from our learners' vocabulary here at school. And that's also an unexpected word in our house because that is truly limiting them and speaking negativity into their cup. And I say cup, thinking about what fills up their positive side of their body. And we want them to always have that to be close to full, if not overflowing. And so when the negative talk happens, think of it as a hole in their bucket, in their cup. So if they're saying a lot of negative self-talk, they're depleting themselves of that self-esteem, that ability, that growth mindset of I can, or I want to try. And even if I'm not able to do it yet, I still want to try a little bit or have that thought of next time I will do better. And so if you have any of these behaviors in your home, I want you to think about how can I be curious once again, why are they making these choices? When it comes to a specific subject, especially with our older learners, they have definitely had an experience I have found where they've had hardships at school. They've received a negative grade. A teacher has even said, guess what? I don't think you're good at this. Or they're in one level of a math group and then they get moved down to another level. And the learner isn't given a chance to re-engage with that challenging work and they have to go to a more remedial group. Thank you. Exactly, Shara. Teacher says negative comments. Yes. And that is the message that's emphasized at school. And so we can't control everything, right? As parents, we can control a lot, but that also means that you have to understand what your child is experiencing when they leave your space. They're going to school, and this is what they might even share with you. My teacher said, I can't do this assignment. They said, Mommy, just skip part B because they said, I'm not good at writing. Okay? If that is the conversation that you have with your child, be encouraging. I hear you, but let's try it together. Maybe I can write the first sentence and you can write the second. Or maybe you can tell me if you would write it, what would you say? You start scribing for your child. Your child can start reading their own words on paper. And then it's like, okay, well, we're almost at the end of the assignment. Do you think you want to try writing the last 2 sentences, 3 sentences? That could be really helpful when it stems from school. Parent-teacher conferences are also a great place to have those hard conversations if it is the consistency where your child has this mindset because of something that's happened at school. Please take it to your teacher, their teacher, and make sure that it's done respectively, but also with a curious mindset. This is what I'm hearing at home.
Sorry, Erin. Oh, sorry. I'm interrupting. Nope. Lucinda also had another quick question in the chat that I just wanted to, I thought is really interesting.
Okay.
Maybe we could answer. So one more question related to this. If my 9-year-old is quite negative about school, how do I stop that spreading to the 3-year-old? Should I separate them for homework so the 3-year-old doesn't see my older kid's negativity? That's a tricky one.
That is. Lucinda, thank you again for another great point of reference. In this situation, I think being able to illustrate that school is a place that is for learning and for meeting new friends and trying hard things. And the reality is, it's not always going to feel happy and vibrant and exciting, right? Our learners are going to have challenges. And so being realistic about the struggles that your 9-year-old is having Also being able to paint that positive picture in front of your 3-year-old. And so not dismissing what your 9-year-old is saying and including the reality of what school could be. So I heard, yes, you're right. Your brother really did have a hard day. Okay, let's think, can we help brother? What are some things that we can do to help brother have a great day? And if your 3-year-old is in school, maybe you even have your 3-year-old participate in that conversation at dinner time in our home. And if you have ability to have family dinners, I highly suggest this activity. We have rose and thorn. So we talk about the rose being your favorite part of your day. What filled your cup up the most? What was the most self-fulfilling experience? And then the thorn is, what was the one experience you had at school today that either you would go back and redo if you could, or the unexpected situation that really made you feel sad and less successful. And so then building norms around those things, right? No one has perfect days. And we want to make sure that when our learners struggle, that they are also aware that this happens to everyone and that they really shouldn't feel othered, but that you have to build that in your conversation and their understanding.
Erin, I just also, we're at 12:40. So I guess what I'm thinking about with questions, maybe we can have folks enter them into the chat, and then we'll save that Q&A at the end for answering all of them. Okay, I'll keep track of
Sounds great.
that.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So skill gap strategies. What are ways, if you are being proactive, there's been consistent struggle, and now you're starting to notice that there might be some gap in their skills? Number one, you can reduce the load without removing the expectation. Once again, we talked about chunking, being able to, I start, you finish. What part of this activity feels the most challenging? Maybe as the parent, you step in and support them in that part of the goal or the activity so that they can feel more successful. And keep track of that. Those might be the skills that you work on during the weekend, right? If it is, I want to do the word problem, but I don't want to do the addition. When you get to the addition, then you tell mommy, what should I be writing down? Or whisper to daddy, what do you think it is? And as the parent, you're guiding that work so they can see it. And then that allows them to lean into part of the work that feels more successful for them in that moment. You could also offer strategic support. So I am going to let you tell me what feels hard. Once again, what do you feel like you could do 2 thumbs up? Let them do that. And then you can step in when it's the 1 thumb down. Or right now with my daughter, we're saying, I start, you finish in the areas that of struggle for her. If it's hard, I'm going to start it and then I want you to finish it, right? That sets them up for success for sure. Normalize the struggle. Like I said before, they want to know that everyone struggles. They do not want to feel othered. Struggling is hard. It's uncomfortable. It's frustrating. It's painful. It's emotional. And in order to struggle, there needs to be a continuous effort for success. So normalizing those hard moments and giving them encouragement to push through them, knowing that they'll be able to do it with the support and maybe independently once in the near future or down the road. And then watch for the patterns across subjects. If it's the reading or the writing or the math, for high school students, it may be interpersonal skills or public speaking skills. For your 5 to 8-year-olds, it could be executive functioning. So unpacking their backpack when they get home, knowing where the papers are that are in their folders. Maybe it's, what happened to your lunchbox? When you left home today, you had a sweatshirt, a coat, and an extra pair of shoes. None of them came home with you. So then maybe it's having that conversation. I'm going to put a little checklist in your backpack, and before you walk out the door of your classroom, I want you to double check. Do you have your coat? Do you have your shoes? Do you have your sweater? And building that normalcy, things that you can also practice at home. We're going to the park. Do you have your coat? Do you have your sweater? Do you have your shoes? It could also be part of your family time where you give them responsibilities within the home. So who would like to clean off the table or empty the dishwasher? Being able to chunk that work and have a partnership. If they have siblings, that's a great way to start that partnership. And also, as a parent, I'll start unloading the dishwasher. I'll unload the heavier things. And I know you love to sort out the silverware. So I'm going to let you do that next. And so we want them also to be successful in every single struggle. So finding one of the biggest carries for their struggles, support them in that area, and then being able to lend a helping hand in the other areas. Okay, Erica. Now, homework. I oftentimes, and I think somebody said this in the beginning, homework is really what feels hard. They don't want to do work at home. And so what you oftentimes see are tears, anger, shutdown, refusal. And even when the work isn't especially difficult, they might just, no, 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 or I want to do something else. And so being able to notice when there are small setbacks and when those small setbacks equivalent to big reactions. That all can lead to struggles with homework. And so understanding and being able to put words to, I am noticing, I am curious, I would love to help, and being able to address all of those different situations, the ebbs and flows of homework that you might be experiencing at home. And so, emotional regulation and frustration strategies. We talk a lot about crying, about loudness, about big words, about shutdown. All of this has to do with emotional regulation. When our children are met with frustration because of struggle, there are different strategies in which we can provide to help support them through these hard times. And we talk about being able to flex their brains because your brain is a muscle. And it's just like when you go to the gym, you work out and your muscles get stronger. You have to do the same thing with your brain. Your downstairs brain or your lower part of your brain is where all of that, when you are in your frontal lobe, you are cool, you are calm, you are collected, and you can do hard things. When emotions start to build, that's when they go to their upstairs brain. Some of you parents might also notice your learner is either going to fight or they're going to run away. And so how can we begin to normalize and support when you're experiencing these emotional dysregulation and frustration with your learners or your children? You could build in the transition buffer after school. We talked a little bit about that before. When we say setting a time, okay, when we get home, let's set the timer for 15 minutes. You can choose what you would like to do to help build quietness for you for a reset, because we have some really important things to do when we're done. And making sure that they can unpack, they can calm down, and they can debrief with you if they need to, what felt hard in the day before they start working on their at-home activities. Addressing emotions before academics. So you want to separate how you feel about what you feel and why you feel. So talking about the emotions before you can talk about the subject. I hate math. Well, why are you feeling so angry right now? Not talking about math, but about the emotion. It's important for them to be able to identify how they feel, and so that they can have that self-reality of, this is my emotion, this is how I'm showing up in this space, and that they still can do the hard things. So let's get to the green level. We want everyone to feel green before we do the hard work. What is something we can do so that we're feeling happy and calm inside again? Oh, you want to lay down and blow bubbles? That sounds like an excellent idea. Let's set a timer, 5 minutes, blowing bubbles. Maybe it's singing and dancing. But being able to carve out scripts so that in those moments, you can actually have a concrete and productive conversation, and not the one where your learner, your child is just yelling at you, where you can actually be there for each other. And stop before the escalation. That's really hard as a parent, because oftentimes it's bubbling up inside of your child before you see anything. And they might be experiencing the struggle, but you may not know it until there's full escalation. So start noticing maybe some signs of things feeling uncomfortable for them before it gets too big to handle. Because you want to say, oh, I'm noticing you're tapping your finger, or I'm noticing that you were sitting next to mommy and then you moved to the other side of the room and looked out the window. Calling the activity, naming the emotion, and being able to provide that safe space for your child to share, to calm down and re-engage is very important in ways to help them with their emotional regulation.
Thanks, Erin. Is this where I take?
Yeah, this is where you take over.
Okay.
I was going to say.
That was chock full of so much amazing information, and that was so rich, so thank you so much. And what we'll do is we have a Q&A at the end, and so any questions for Erin or myself, we'll make sure to hold that space for you. I just wanted to share a couple of additional tools that could be helpful for you when you are going through some homework routine difficulties. Is you could have a homework policy and a homework agreement. These are all in your Padlet. So a homework policy would just be like, what are my expectations as the parent? What are the expectations for the child? And what are some of the consequences if that homework routine is not followed? An agreement is something similar, but you might also want to include like a reward at the end. So let's say I did my homework for 10 minutes, I took a break, I finished my homework, and I did a chore. They could do like a little spinny wheel where they earn a treat for the day, or maybe they earn a star. But having a contract with your child so everyone is on the same page is a really, really helpful support. And again, that's in your Padlet, and you could find some examples of that and use them for yourself. All right, I'm going to bypass the questions right now just because I'm going to get to this other section. So we have talked a lot about what happens when our children struggle. And now we want to talk a little bit about what happens to you when your children struggle, because this is just as much about us as the parent and the adult than it is about the child. So just a quick question is, how do you feel when your children are struggling? You could just put one word into the chat box. For me, I would probably write the word frustrated. Oh, thank you for adding. So we have failing. Yes, that's also a feeling I have. Absolutely. Any other ways that we feel when our children are struggling, when we just watch them? Okay. We have guilty, restless, and there's one over here actually in the Q&A. We have one that says stressed. So that's a different one. Okay. So continue to add your thoughts and ideas and I'm going to keep moving along. I just saw Shara wrote, I feel like I need to step in and help him find research as part of his learning. So we feel this urge and we feel this need to support, which really makes a lot of sense. Here are some ideas and examples of ways that we can support our kids in really positive, productive, and healthy ways. And so these are just 3 ideas I have. You might have some other ideas. But the first one that I really like to think about is something called connection over correction. And so when we see our kids struggling, we just kind of want to come in and help them and fix it, tell them what they maybe are doing wrong. But what we want to think about is, before we make that correction, we want to think about connecting. And really what that does is it allows the child to feel like we're there for you, we're supportive of you, we love you, no matter how well you're doing in school. So it might sound something like, I can see that you're really struggling right now. I'm here for you. Is there some way that I could help you? Or if your child is having a meltdown, before we say, you need to calm down. You need to get it together. We need to move on with homework. We may want to say something along the lines of, I can see you're really struggling. I'm here to support you. Let's work through this together. And then you could get back to your homework. So I like to just have that motto in my head, connection over correction, and it really helps the child to feel that you're on their side. I also like to think about my own boundaries. And so when I see my child struggling or they're either with their homework or in school, how, and it relates a little bit to what Shara had just said, really, how much am I going to step in? And so Erin had mentioned before the concept of healthy struggle. So we want our kids to struggle somewhat, but we don't want it to become so over the top struggling that they have a meltdown, but we also don't want to step in too quickly. So my boundary is that my children always have to start and try on their own. If they need my help after they start and try, I'm there to support them, but I'm not going to do the work for them and I'm not going to help them before they've tried it themselves. And so that's my boundary. And maybe you have different boundaries, but it's good to know and good to think about what are your boundaries. And then finally, I like this way of talking to kids about their schoolwork and about engaging with their schoolwork, especially at home, is being kind and firm. So we want them to know that, again, that connection over correction, we're here for you, we love you, and you still need to do your work. So kind and firm may sound something like a child is struggling with their math problem and having a meltdown. And so kind and firm would sound like that sounds like you're really having a hard time with your math. You do need to complete it. We can take a break before you complete it, but we do need to finish your homework. Or I hear that you do not want to do your chores this afternoon. You really want to just have a lot of fun. We do need to do chores. They need to get done, but maybe we could play a little game first. So that kind and firm, really balancing that. So you're holding the line so they know that there's an accountability, but also there's a sense of kindness and kindness there and sensitivity. So we had talked a little bit about the difference between normal struggling and maybe struggling that feels a little bit more concerning. And actually, what we'll do is when we meet again for the second part of this series at the end of April, is we'll look at some of those more red flag kind of behaviors and we'll talk about what that looks like in terms of a school support system. Who do you go to talk about your child? How do you raise concerns? How do you make sure they're getting the services they need? But for now, I don't expect you to read this chart at all and memorize it. This is actually available for you on the Padlet. But I wanted to take a quick look at what's typical as kids grow, especially areas in like focus, organization, planning, and managing frustration. So these skills really develop slowly over time, and it's normal for kids to struggle sometimes, even if they're bright and motivated. So in early elementary, and this kind of goes to what Lucinda was talking about early, is like how much do we let how much should our kids actually be able to work independently? So this is kind of an answer to that question. In early elementary, kids need reminders and big feelings are common. By upper elementary, so upper elementary is kind of like more like grades 3 to 5. They're learning independence, but organization and follow through can still be uneven. In middle school, the demands of school increase faster than their skills. So, homework and planning can be very tricky. And I can attest to this from having a middle school child that he's a very smart child, but homework and planning is a challenge for sure. By high school, planning and self-monitoring are still developing, and even teenagers need help breaking down projects or managing deadlines. So the key question here really is my child improving with support or excuse me, are struggles persisting despite help? And that can usually tell us whether something is a typical behavior or a typical part of development or really deserves a closer look. So you don't need to memorize this chart. We can think of it as a guide to notice patterns. But most importantly, to remember that needing support doesn't mean that something is wrong. It just means that your child is still growing and still developing these essential skills. And one area where a child may seem typical, and there might be another area that feels harder than expected. So just really kind of keeping that in mind. And again, this chart is available for you on Padlet. You can access it anytime. So just a quick question, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Erin. Erin, is this your slide, or should I'll introduce this and then pass it over to you. Okay. Um, So we've already talked a little bit in the chat, and we're kind of getting towards the end here. It's 12:57. So Erin, I'm going to make a decision on the fly. And maybe we take the teacher part and we could add it to our next session, supporting struggling learners too, because I just want to make sure we get to, let me just advance the screen real quick. Yeah, we can't get to this real. Okay. You know what I think we're going to do, everyone, because it's already 12:58 and we've given you so much information. We had a whole section on collaborating with teachers that we're actually going to save for our next session, and we'll give you a little bit of detail about that in a moment. But we wanted to hold some time open right now for any kind of Q&A that you have for Erin or myself. Um, I know that there was a question in the there's a Q&A. Um, my son is down on himself when he doesn't do well. I encourage him to ask for help or stay for additional support. I do tell him to break other things down. Homework and math is a big struggle. So it sounds as if this child is really feeling down on himself when he's not doing well, which I think can be very upsetting and stressful for both the child and the parent. And I would just say, the more that we can show children that learning is a process and they may not be getting what they want to in that very moment, but we, in the last webinar that Erin and I taught, we used the words not yet. And so the idea is that we're not necessarily like smart or, not doing well in one area because we have a fixed intelligence, but really we have an effort and a strategy that we're going to use and we'll get there, just not yet. So I would say normalizing feelings of feeling kind of frustrated and down on yourself makes a lot of sense when you're not doing well, but that doesn't mean you're not going to get there. So using a term like not yet might be something that could be really, really helpful. I don't know, Sherry, if that answers your question. Please feel free to continue to ask. And we'll hold it open for any other questions that we have. Any questions for Erin or myself? We'll wait, maybe just another minute. Okay. Erin, do you have any other thoughts for Sherry? She said she did try that, making sure that he said it's in the Q&A. I don't know if you see that. Yeah. Um,
Sherry, I would be curious for you to ask him what part of math feels challenging, because then you might be able to look at a specific concept that he's either practicing or he has just learned, and that might be the trigger within just math homework in general. And so being able to also scaffold it, maybe it's introducing or supporting that concept or that specific ask or activity that is the hard part for him, if that makes sense.
that sounds like a great idea. She said, okay, that was a great idea. Thanks, Erin. Okay, everyone. So we want to invite you to the next part of this series, and I think Alexis will put the link in the chat. We are going to have a Struggling Learners Part 2 where we're going to talk all about, okay, so we've tried these things, we've done all the things that Erin and Erica presented, but my child is still struggling and what to do next. And so that's really going to be about how to collaborate with teachers, how to raise issues to different people in the school system, how to get your child the support they need. So you can scan this QR code here, or Alexis just put the link in the chat. We would love to have you back. And we want to thank you so much for your participation today. And thank you for joining us during your noon, I guess Eastern time, it's noon, maybe lunch hour or something. And we hope you have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us.